Hello, everyone. How are we doing? So we are here at the presentation. So, like what as you're expecting, it is the principles of dieting without killing your performance, and it's something that a lot of people have said they actually struggle with this. So, I thought I'd put this together as just a free resource that may help you in sort of navigating a dieting phase while still keeping your performance high. Now, one thing I want to clarify is I understand that this is sort of centered and focused around athletes or people who train quite a lot, or training is a big part of people's lives. But these principles can still be applied to people in a general sense. If you're a highly functioning person within a job situation, or if you do balance work and other high octane lifestyle factors like kids or running a business, these principles can still be applied to that, because at the end of the day, training is a stress, and every other thing outside of in life is also a stressor. And once you're balancing those things, it can help. So obviously, having control over your diet and understanding how to diet properly without having too much of an effect on you that it's a huge stressor as well can be very important. So this can still be applied to normal life. It is focused again around athletes and people who where training is a big part of their lives, but it can still be applied everywhere else. The other thing I want to clarify is this. This will be focused around nutrition and a little bit around sort of mindset, mentality things as well. But one thing you have to understand is, regardless of what you're doing with your nutrition, if your body fat goes to quite a low place, where oftentimes it can be below 10% for men, or maybe below 8% roughly, and below 15% for women roughly. Now, there's no exact number, but those are two, I'd say consistent numbers across the board where you would see consistent drop offs in performance. Once you get to a lower body fat percentage, performance deficits, especially within explosive sports, endurance, strength-based sports, those are almost unavoidable for most people. There are outliers in every way, in everything, but for the majority of people, you will see a performance drop off regardless if you go to those lower body fat ranges. But that's when you get quite lean. If you're someone now who's got a bit of added body fat, where maybe you're a man who can't see his abs yet, or maybe even for ladies as well, you can't see your abs yet, you're not as lean as you'd like to be, you might be in that higher percentage, but you do train a lot. This is for you, and this can help you navigate dieting without killing your performance and losing all your gains, or just hating nutrition and training altogether because of it. So let's get into it. We're going to be covering a lot about nutrition, about how to navigate these things, and a few other bits along the way. And the last slide before the conclusion could arguably be one of the most important, so make sure you stick around. But anyway, enough yap for me, let's get into it. So we are starting with the problem, and we've got a very sad guy here in the corner wondering if abs are even worth it. Now, look, I think they are, and I think they're attainable for most people, and I think everyone should try. Everyone wants to look good, so we should all try. So let's get into the problem anyway. Enough yap from me. If you train like an animal, Hyrox, CrossFit, hybrid, field sports, martial arts, strength training, the list goes on. But you don't think you look like one, you don't feel like you look like one. All go, but not as much show. You want to have a physique that matches how you perform, or maybe complements your performance. Oftentimes, being leaner can help with performance, unless you're in a heavier weight class in a strength sport. That often can, higher body fat percentages can be helpful there. You diet down but feel half starved, eating what you think is next to fuck all. Sorry for the swearing, but I like to swear. Energy drops, training quality takes a nosedive, and you feel like getting leaner might not be on the cards for you. You repeat the cycle every time, you get the motivation to try again, but run into the same problems. Never fear. There is a way to do this right, to perform like an athlete and to develop your dream physique. But it does take some education and understanding. So let's get into that. So we all understand the problem. I feel like this kind of fits the criteria for most of us. We often struggle when we spend a couple of weeks or a length of time in a dieting phase, and we often find that we end up going backwards in our training as a result, and it ends up not being productive, and it almost harms your relationship around dieting and around training. So we want to avoid that. So let's get into how we're going to do that. So, this absolute stud right here is going to talk about what we need to do and what's required. So, essentially, what is required? It's a calorie deficit. Now, I know that term has been hammered into our brains on repeat for years by Instagram, essentially. Well, unfortunately, that's exactly what's required. It's a calorie deficit where you reduce the overall amount of energy from food that you consume so that it is below what your body naturally burns through. This will lead to reach for other resources of energy. Ideally, that new source of energy will be your excess body fat that you wish to get rid of. Now, how do we make sure that the body reaches for its body fat as a fuel source and not just muscle mass or muscle mass? Macronutrients can then dictate the ratio of fat you lose and the muscle you retain, along with keeping the process manageable. So it's essential that these are taken into account along with your calories. Now, while I did just focus on macronutrients there, the amount of calories you eat also will have a big effect on what gets used, and I'll get into that further. But essentially what's required is a calorie deficit with, a good macronutrient split. So let's get into that. Next up, let me go over here. Whoop, where are we? So, firstly, before we go any further, when does a dieting phase make sense? There is a time and place for when dieting is an appropriate decision, and definitely one where it is not. With performance being a big factor in your training, you don't want your deficit getting in the way of your training when it's supposed to be at the forefront of your focus, when training is at the forefront of your focus. So, I'm going to start when it doesn't make sense. During a prep, or when performance and progression is at the forefront of training. So if you've got a game coming up, or an event like a fight if you're a boxer, or a match if you're a field athlete, or a powerlifting meet if you're a powerlifter, unless you have to get into a weight class, dieting phase wouldn't make sense there, because your energy naturally when you diet isn't going to be as abundant as it would be if you're eating at a maintenance or at a slight surplus. So best thing to do is avoid dieting when you're about to compete, when you're like a couple of weeks out from competing. Now, like I have there, unless it's bodybuilding or a weight cut is required for a weight-based sports. Martial arts can be a good example, I suppose, now that I mention it, and powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting, those things. So maybe you might have to go for a cut there, but those guys often go for like gut cuts, where they just try and reduce the overall food volume in their system, as opposed to extended deficits or extended diets. And that's what we're talking about here, is an extended diet where body composition is at the forefront. When does it make sense though? In the off season, when you're not aiming, when you don't have an event in close proximity, so to speak, when you have a lot of excess body fat to lose, can also make sense when there are no competitions or events happening for a lengthy period. Let it be 16, 20 weeks. So where you've got a good 8-week run and a bit of time after to diet down, get into good shape, and then bring your calories back up and get back to performing well. But you just want an extended period of time where you want to focus on getting leaner while maintaining your gains. And that's what we're going to talk about. But basically, don't diet down when you've got a match or an event like a couple of weeks out, unless you have to lose weight for it. So for all you field athletes, dieting before matches is a bad idea. Don't diet when there's no matches in sight, honestly. Unless, of course, you are someone who's carrying a lot of excess body fat, like 10, 20 kilos or more. There's a lot of excess energy there, and that can probably be tapped into while you diet. So you'll probably be feeling better, if anything. But if you're a relatively in shape person who just wants to get a bit leaner, probably best keep it away from your games. So, energy versus performance. This is probably one of the key principles of this all. Okay, so when you understand this kind of helps you understand what you're kind of aiming for in general sense. So, everything the body does has a cost, energy-wise. The less energy you take in through food, the more the body has to pull from its own reserves. Now, that's just all the tissue that it can pull from, let it be fat, muscle, fucking water in the system, why not? A steep deficit will mean the body has to use energy to create it from itself, which is also a stressor. And that's why people, especially athletes who go on crash diets, go super low, their energy falls off a fucking cliff. This would happen anyway with normal people if they drop their calories way too low, but for athletes, it's way more prevalent. Even a lot of athletes can experience REDS, a lot of female athletes especially, which is relative energy deficit syndrome, I believe. Yeah, that's what it's called. Where the calories go way too low, they go crash dieting, and their overall performance takes a horrible nosedive. There's a huge hormonal issue as well, and there's health implications to that as well. And that can come from crash diets, especially when your output is quite high and your performance is supposedly quite high. When you're trying to balance these two stressors and one ends up taken from the other, you have to understand that everything costs. Everything has a cost, and you don't want to put yourself into such a steep deficit that your body can't handle that cost. And that's why it's a balancing act. You must reduce calories enough to elicit fat loss, but not so much that it becomes such a stress that performance will be hindered. You got to find a sweet spot. Results without too much cost. It's like a scales balancing thing. You could almost compare it to, like, I don't know, budgeting, I guess, where you don't want to save so much money that you can't afford anything, or vice versa, spend so much money that you go broke. It's a balancing act, and you can kind of look at this chart here, this line chart, as an example, something I put together. The further across your deficit goes, I suppose deficit could be no, yeah, deficit along the bottom, yeah. So the further forward, the further along your deficit goes, the bigger it becomes, the more of a negative trajectory performance can have. You can probably have this both ways, to be honest, but in a sense, the deeper your deficit goes, the more at risk you will be of having a performance issue. So it's really about understanding the minimum effective amount of calories you can eat. You got to find the little sweet spot where you can still perform well and still maintain your gains without, feeling like a bag of shit. Shut up, phone. Go away. So, my phone was vibrating there. Just go away. Stop distracting me. Okay. So, hopefully that makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense to anyone, be sure to DM me. But let's get into the core principles of what we gotta achieve. So, protect performance first. There is no point dieting down to look better if it comes at the cost of how your body operates in what you do. Okay, that's paramount. You're an athlete at the end of the day. You just want to look a bit better, which is fine. But we don't want to sacrifice how we perform, especially in any meaningful way, as best we can. The smallest effective deficit is what you need. Like I said, something small, 150 to 300 calories, but what will bring about slow but steady fat loss. So this deficit window, 150 to 300 calories roughly. Some people can handle more. Some people will be on the smaller side of things. It varies person to person. This is just a general guideline. A smaller deficit will be a lot easier for your body to handle. You'll still have a decent amount of food coming in and energy coming from, externally, and it won't be too stressful for your body to reach for its reserves because it won't have to work that hard to pull energy from itself. And in that case, body fat will probably be the first one to go, because while you're training and while you're exercising, whether you're lift, strength training, endurance training, whatnot, your body, your muscle tissue, which will be responsible for all of those things happening, will be the last thing to go. Your muscle tissue is responsible for your ability to lift weight and produce force and to move, locomotion, running, sprinting, jumping, whatnot. If that's in use and it's constantly stimulated and constantly having to perform, it's the last thing your body's going to want to get rid of. So if your deficit's small, it won't have to work that hard to find fuel, and it can it's easier for it to grab that from body fat. Next one is adjust training accordingly. Now this is vague, but it makes a difference. When you're dieting, you can have good days and bad days, regardless. Like, you probably will have good days and bad days. You'll have days where you're feeling a bit shitty, and other days where you're feeling like absolute money, or just feeling okay. And some days you might have to adjust your training, whether it's strength training and you gotta lower the RPE or lower the overall volume. Whether it's running, you gotta bring the mileage down or the speed down, or maybe on the day it ain't the day for a sprint session. And same with matches, same with, like, sport training. Or as the diet progresses, you may need to, I suppose, not do as much. You have to maybe adjust it on the fly week to week based on how you respond. And when you're dieting, you'll be more sensitive to responses. You won't be as consistent across the board. You can be, some of you can be, but you may run into times when performance isn't as good as it could be, So it's just about adjusting training as you go, whether that's your coach's job or you're doing it yourself. Just understand and have the expectation that there may be days where you just don't have it in you to give it your absolute all. You're still aiming to be able to perform, but you may have days that just ain't there. Or it just ain't there. Your best isn't there, and that's fine. Just make sure you're able to adjust it accordingly, whether it's reducing volume, reducing intensity in some places, or just adding a rest day where needed. You have to kind of adjust on the fly. It's called auto-regulation. It's arguably the best way to handle programming for everybody, but it becomes very relevant when dieting, especially when you're trying to maintain performance. Last thing then is food quality. Macronutrient and micronutrient rich diet is essential for maintaining muscle mass, keeping appetite lower, and maintaining basic health. When you're in a maintenance phase, you can kind of get away with a bit more, especially as an athlete where you get to eat a lot of food. Some of you guys, you can eat a lot of shit and perform pretty well. A lot of athletes do eat like absolute toddlers. When you're dieting, you can't do that because you won't be able to eat as much food because a lot of those foods are quite calorie dense. So when your calories are reduced or are in a controlled environment, food quality becomes quite important. Let it be protein, healthy carbs, high fibrous carbs in place as well, just for health, getting healthy fats in for your hormonal health, and then just protein and carbs, like I said, for performance and recovery, as well as keeping you fuller for longer. That's where fiber and protein will come in as well. So it's just, and we'll get into that, but food quality becomes a lot more important. So make sure you're up to date on what you should be eating and you're educated on what you should be eating because it will make a difference. You won't, if you eat like shit, eat like a toddler, and if you do, you know it, you won't get away with that when you're dieting. In the long run, anyway. Maybe in the early days you can, but in the long run, no, you won't. So make sure your food quality is up to scratch. Okay, so practical application. What can this look like day to day? So there's four main focus that you need to get the most out of your food when dieting, but still maintaining performance. So there's four areas. There's calories, carbs, protein, fats, and fiber, and then timing. And these are my kind of four pillars anyway. There's a few others you can throw in there, but I think these are probably the most important. Obviously, first, calories, small to moderate deficit, 150 to 300 calories should do the job. Maybe airing towards the 300. 150 is quite low, and that'll probably be hard to manage. That'll be hard to like get exactly. You might want to push that 300 now that I think of it, because 150 you mightn't see much of anything because you might be higher one day and lower another day in terms of how many calories you put out, and 150 is quite hard to be accurate with. It's quite a small gap, so maybe airing towards the 300 would be good. Take into account activity levels and training volumes. This is a mistake people kind of run into. So we're just here on point one. This is a mistake people run into where they'll go onto a calorie calculator and they'll just get the maintenance calories of a 75 kilo male who's relatively active. If you're an athlete and you are running a lot, you play a field sport, you get a lot of steps in, you're going to be quite an active person. And that will have a huge effect on how many calories you burn in a day. You'll be shocked the amount of calories people burn in a day, and females as well. Like ladies, you can be guilty of underestimating your calories severely. And again, there's also demonization of like below 2,000 calories. Like calories can go as low or as high. It's individual, but we can all be very guilty, especially ladies, of underestimating our calories and our maintenance, and we end up going into a very severe deficit, and that's where REDS issue comes in, relative energy deficit syndrome, and just shit dieting phases and health implications. Take into account your activity levels. If you're an athlete, if you're a field athlete, if you run a lot, if you train hard like CrossFit or High Rocks, like your caloric output could be quite high. It could be a lot higher than you think. There's athletes out there, especially ladies, who their output could be near 3,000 calories. And that sounds shocking, I know, but it's possible. So take into like your weight, your age, your current leanness roughly, and your overall output, and be honest. Be as honest as you can, whether it's super high or super low. Be honest, okay? Because that'll have a big impact on what your target deficit will be. Carbs. Point two. So they are your primary fuel source, and I recommend 50% of total calories, approximately. They are your primary fuel source when it comes to performing. Okay, they will fuel your training like no other. Okay, they are the king macronutrient. I think protein gets way too much love. Carbs are fucking king. Alright? Do not be afraid of them. They are the best. They will, like your brain, like anyone who's seen the Fall Guy movie, like that meme, it's like you need carbs. Your brain runs on glucose. Like it's true. Your body needs them, especially if you're an athlete. So eat carbs. All right, they're muscle sparing, so then they help with the retention of muscle, if not building muscle, because they help with performance. And a muscle that can perform is a muscle that can grow. But yeah, 50% your total calories. It's a lot more than people might expect, but yeah, keep them. Because once you're in a calorie deficit, you lose body fat. So how you distribute your macros is up to you. Protein and fats, minimum effective amounts here for recovery and hormonal function. So protein have a huge effect on recovery, and fats your hormonal function, as well as actually nutrient uptake and nutrient absorption. So it's very important. 25% total calories for each of them. So the rest of your calories go to protein and fats. And again, you use like MacroFactor and MyFitnessPal to calculate these for you. Don't try and do the maths actively. You can, but choose a calorie calculator. And then finally, then with fiber, 20 to 40 grams of fiber daily for appetite control. A lot of people are guilty of like eating fuck all fiber, like fruits and veg. All right, each fiber, get a fiber supplement if you have to, which is like a gut health supplement. It's usually like people think they're magic. It's just fiber, but they're handy. They're handy to get an extra 5 grams, and that can make a difference because it can keep you fuller for longer. But it also helps with basic health functions. People who eat a lot of fiber just generally die less. Which is true. It's a mad fact, but yeah. But outside of that, foods that are rich in fiber and protein are slower to digest, so they help with fullness. So it'll help with managing your appetite. Lastly, then, meal timing structured around training. So structure your foods around your training. High amounts of simple carbs before. That can be breads, cereals, bananas, whatnot. Just sugary, slightly processed carbohydrates can be very helpful. Rice is also okay, but just not like directly before it. And carb and protein focused meal after. Now, this is simply to help you perform. So carbs, high carb before training session. You see the classic bagel and banana with some jam or peanut butter can be a classic pre-workout training session. It's just a load of simple carbohydrates. Training meals, sorry. And then high carb and protein after for just recovery and just replenishing your glycogen stores within your muscles. The carbs are basically glycogen, and they're your energy source within your muscle mass. Obviously, you've got your fiber and fats which you'll scatter throughout the day, but try and avoid high fat and high fiber and high protein before training, like directly before training. That could almost impede your performance because it'll just sit in your stomach like a fucking rot and it'll slow your digestion. So don't do that. Hydration. This is huge. A lot of people are like severely dehydrated, like a lot, especially normal people. Athletes generally aren't so bad, but when you're in a dieting phase, this can be more important because, as you can see in the second paragraph, it's a big reason why carbs are kept as high as possible. 1 gram of glycogen in the carbs is 3 grams of water. Now, when you're in a dieting phase, you'll naturally probably eat less carbs, so you might have less water in your system. So let me just go through why water and just, I suppose, hydration in general is so important. Firstly, poor hydration can cause lower strength output, reduced endurance or power, which is just speed and strength essentially. But yeah, you know what I mean. Worse recovery, reduced focus, and your muscles contract worse. Your muscles' ability to contract is impeded. It's worse. So we got to be hydrated. So quickly, daily baseline fluids. 30 to 40 milliliters of water per kg of body weight. Example, 80 kilogram person, 2.5 to 3.5 liters per day. And this can give or take depending on how much you sweat, how salty your sweat is as well, the amount of cardio you're doing, the climate you're in. If it's a very warm country like Ireland right fucking now, actually it's like 30 degrees right now, which is insane. I'm sweating in my kitchen. It's the reason I have this, so to stop the sun cooking the house. And the last thing then is training volume. If you train a lot, you'll sweat a lot, you'll lose water slowly, like a bit more, you know? So within that range, 30 to 40 milliliters of fluids. Now, we'll get into supplements in a second. We're right here. So I know you're about to ask about electrolytes. We are here at supplements. Now, one thing to know about supplements is they are exactly what they are called. Supplements. They are the cherry on top of an already adequate nutritional approach. So let's talk about a few. Creatine. It's a no-brainer. Replenishes ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which helps with producing more higher efforts. It's just an energy cell that helps you produce more higher efforts. You can recover a bit better. It's also shown to have cognitive benefits, like reducing chance of dementia or helping you perform in a sleep deprived state, but that's not relevant to dieting. It could be actually, now that I think of it, but it's helpful for performance, even building muscle. One thing to know, when you start taking creatine, especially in higher doses, you may require more water. It does pull more water from your cells to allow it to be absorbed into the muscle, essentially. So just understand that if you add in creatine, you may need to drink more water. And also, some people who fucking piss me off with this, creatine does not make you gain weight. Indirectly it does. You gain some water. okay, into your body, okay? So if you add creatine in while you're dieting and you see your weight go up, relax. You're fine. It's going to be fine. Be logical. There's no calories in creatine, okay? Water has just been brought to your cells. In fact, the only thing that's happened is your muscles are a bit more full. So you're actually a bit leaner. So take it as a win. But yeah, if you see your weight go up when you take creatine, you didn't get fat. It's just a natural thing that happens. The weight will come back down. Next supplement, hopefully that makes sense on creatine, but next supplement is caffeine. It's great for maintaining focus and is a natural appetite suppressant. Can keep your appetite down, caffeine, especially coffees, I find, even just anecdotally, I've experienced that. And it's great for maintaining focus. It is not an energy booster. It does not make you perform better. It just keeps you mentally switched on. Just understand that. Okay, so don't go into training fasted if you can avoid it, unless you're training very early in the morning, like when you get up. That's okay because you probably have food in your system from the day before, but it is not an energy booster. It is a focus booster. Keeps you more mentally switched on. All right, so you still will need some pre-workout carbohydrates if you want to perform well. This does not replace them. It's a cognitive booster. It's a great one though. I love caffeine. Last one is electrolytes. Look, essentially, if your sport has a high sweat rate or you train in warmer climates, then it's great for replenishing sodium, potassium, and magnesium. The good time to take them is before one of those like high sweat sessions, whether it's like field sport, cardio, high rocks, CrossFit, whatever, or if you're training in a warm climate, or you can have it during your session. You're better off being proactive with it though. It takes a little bit of time for it to be taken up into your system. So if you're already dehydrated, you start having electrolyte, it's a bit too late, especially if you're training. So, stay hydrated and use them to just make sure you don't become dehydrated. All right. Okay, so this last point is a big one. Now, before I get into it, I want you to understand I'm not a mindset coach. I'm not someone who specializes with the emotional side of dieting, right? I've done dieting and I've navigated challenges. I've helped people navigate challenges. But for those of you who experience a lot of mental challenges with it, I'm not a specialist in that. But this one thing here, I do know for a fact, and I've seen it play out. It is something to watch out for, and especially if you find dieting challenging, and that is the nocebo effect. All right, so nocebo, you mightn't have heard of. You may have, but you mightn't have. But what I know a lot of people have heard of is the placebo effect. So your mindset will dictate a lot more than you give it credit for. And I know we've heard that before, but it's real. So let me get into this. Previous studies have found that simply believing something will work can actually give it potential to have an effect. And that's the placebo effect. Let it be with medications where one group receives a medication, the actual medication, and one group, the placebo group, gets given like a sugar pill, and one group gets given a sugar pill and told it's a sugar pill. So the placebo group is told it's medication. Because they believe it's going to be medication, they actually experience some effects. I believe that's what happens. This is what happens. That is what happens. So if someone is convinced that something works, it can have an effect. That belief can have an effect and have an outcome. Your brain dictates a lot. I'm telling you, a lot. But then there's also the opposite of that. There's something called the nocebo effect. If you believe something is going to have a negative effect, or you've been convinced of that thing, you can increase its likelihood of coming to fruition. So if you go into a dieting phase thinking that I'm going to be fucking starving, my performance is going to fall off a cliff, I'm going to get injured at some point because I'm not eating as much, or bad things are going to happen, my hair is going to fall out, I'm going to die. I shouldn't joke about it, but the nocebo effect is real, and you can nocebo yourself, or people can nocebo you. They can tell you how bad something is, and then when you try it and you experience the bad things they said would happen, like your back is always going to get hurt when you deadlift, shit like that. This is real. I've got some references here, just PubMed references, just to back up what I'm saying. There are two different reviews of the placebo effect and nocebo effect. It's very real. So go into a dieting phase. All I can recommend is go into a dieting phase logically. Okay? Understand what you have to do and understand the potential things that can happen, but don't convince yourself of things that may or may not happen. You're not guaranteed to experience hormonal deficits or like problems. You know, you're not guaranteed that your performance is going to fall off a cliff or that your muscle mass will fall apart or you'll become weak. But if you convince yourself of that, you will increase the likelihood actively. So, just go into it logically. I know I'm speaking very like, woo, scary nocebo, but it's real. It's real. So, make sure you're in a logical place mentally. You're not scared of the fact that you're going dieting. You're not thinking of all the things that can go wrong. It's not that deep. All right. As long as you give yourself enough time to do it, we'll get into that in the conclusion. As long as you give yourself the right environment to go into it, and that you follow all the necessary steps, and that you adjust things accordingly, and essentially give yourself enough time, and don't be so hard on yourself, you'll be fine. Even if you don't get the result you want, you'll be fine. Okay? So yeah, no SIBO. Don't convince yourself of bad things are going to happen, because you'll increase the chance of that happening. Okay, so in conclusion, we finally got here 30 minutes later. Sorry for keeping you so long. Hopefully you're still here. So conclusion, the main principles of dieting still stand. A calorie deficit is what will bring you the result you want. You just need to be careful with the severity or how steep that deficit is. Some people can handle more, some people not so much. It's up to you to find that, or you and your coach. By the way, I have coaching slots available if you're looking for coaching. Whatever. Let's get in. Like, come on, this is a freaking. I'm here to help. So, diet must be nutrient rich. Eating like a child will make you feel and perform like ass. So, eat well, eat properly. Fruits, vegetables, fibers, carbohydrates, plenty protein, healthy fats, the lot. Structure your meals around your training. Remember, so high carb before training, high protein and carb and fiber after training, and in other parts of the day away from the training session. Supplements can help, but aren't going to make a difference to a shit diet. Remember that? Okay? It's a cherry on top. That's all it is. It's a supplement. It's not the foundation. Give yourself enough time. 4 weeks before a game or a performance-based event is not a good idea. It's not going to work out well. You'll just go into the game not feeling too well. Maybe a bit leaner. You might look a bit better. So, I don't know, if you're one of the guys, take your shirt off at the end. You'll look good. Maybe you didn't play good, but maybe you look good. and while you can maintain performance, trying to progress can be a tall task for some people, especially if you're trying to get that extra bit lean, especially if you already are in a lean state. Now, like I said, if you're already in a lean state and you're trying to get very lean, you more than likely could experience performance deficits. But don't put pressure on yourself to be hitting PBs every fucking week when you're dieting. You're naturally putting yourself into an energy deficit, okay? If a PB comes, which it can, take it. Take it as a win. That's class. That's fucking brilliant. You might be building muscle as you do it, or you might be getting better as you diet. But don't put pressure on yourself for it. If you were carrying excess body fat, you could still see performance increases and improvements. But remember, the maintaining and protecting of performance and the improvement of body composition is the goal, not hitting PBs. While it can still happen, you should still train like that. You should still train hard. Don't put pressure yourself to be hitting PBs every week. All right? Thank you and happy training. That is it. That is the presentation. I hope it was helpful, everyone. I hope you got something out of this, if you're still fucking here. My socials are here on the bottom left. Luke Burke Coaching on Instagram and lukeburkept@gmail.com. DM me or DM me or fill in the application in my bio for coaching if you're interested. I have slots for online coaching and one-to-one PT if you're looking for it. If you're not sure which one you want, just hit me up. Hit me a text, hit me a DM on Instagram. We can talk. We can set up a free call, whatnot. But if none of that interests you, at least I hope this was helpful. I hope this helped you, and I hope this made the next time you go into a dieting phase just a little bit easier. But yeah, that is it from me. I'm glad you stuck around if you did, and again, hopefully it's helpful. But anyway, I will see you in the next one, guys. All the best, and happy training.